Wonderful. All right, so like I said, my name is Shannon. I'm the program manager for CMAP. See a lot of unfamiliar names here, so I just want to share a little bit about CMAP. CMAP is the Southeastern Massachusetts Agricultural Partnership, and we're the buy local organization for Norfolk, Bristol, and Plymouth counties in Massachusetts. So we offer business assistance to farmers, fishers, and food producers. So we do so in spaces like this, but also in one-on-one spaces. So definitely, if you're not familiar with us and you're in our region, as we go through this, think about whether you would benefit from some one-on-one consultation. We can talk a little bit more about options for that at the end. And with that, I'll turn it right over to you, Myrna, and we can get started.
Great, thank you, Shannon. So you know why you're here. You're here to find out about Keep Them Coming Back, strategies for customer retention. And I'm going to start with a little bit of housekeeping that several times during the presentation, we're going to stop for a little bit to give you time to write down your thoughts. So if you can't have a piece of paper or something, a place to write on your computer or phone, you might find it beneficial to write a few things down to take advantage of the inspiration that will hopefully be coming to your mind. The main session, as Shannon said, will be 90 minutes, and then there'll be 30 minutes after for additional questions. But as we can, I'm happy to answer questions as they come up. And then, as Shannon said, the single most popular question in any Zoom event is, will the session be recorded? So as you said, yes, it will be recorded and you'll get a link to it. So I'm going to start out just telling you a little bit about me and my credentials, so you have some sense of where I learned all this stuff. I hatched my consulting company, Good Egg Marketing, in 2010. And I do marketing and business planning for farms and food businesses, as well as other nonprofits and sort of businesses that are working for social good. I'm a frequent speaker at conferences and events, and I wrote a book last year called Marketing Your Farm, a practical guide to attracting loyal customers and increasing sales. And I'll be adding a link to it at the end if you're interested in ordering it. Oh, thank you, Shannon. Appreciate the visual aid there. And there are a lot of more examples in the book and extended information, but it's all hopefully in the same kind of conversational fun style that makes it easy to reference. So here's the agenda for today. I promised you 5 strategies. You'll get 5 strategies. The first one is know your customers. The second, provide stellar customer service. Third is using loyalty programs or incentives. The fourth is how clarifying your brand can help you retain loyal customers. And then finally, talking about communications and how to make those compelling. All 5 of these, either individually or together, can be very effective at helping you keep customers coming back. So we're going to go into each of them in some amount of detail with some examples. So let's get started with knowing your customers. Shannon is going to share a poll now, so you all should know the drill.
All right, we'll give it just another few seconds. Great. All right, you should see the results on your screens now.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's scrolling to the end though. Can you scroll up at all or down? Or
I,
maybe that is everything. I can't remember. Anyway, why don't we go with this? So as you can see from this, interesting to see the results. Number one was quality, which doesn't surprise me at all. Social impact, number two, which is interesting. We're going to talk about this in a minute. Enjoy the experience, and price, convenience are at the bottom, which is actually not that surprising to me, because we know the challenges about providing local food, that it's hard to compete all the time on price and convenience. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Um, can you, oh, okay, I got rid of that, and I will go on to the next slide. So here are the three key factors that motivate most food shoppers, and this is based on a lot of different research, which tends to hold true on pretty much anything that I ever see. So I'm going to talk about each of these, and number one, not surprisingly, is quality. And what's interesting is that the average consumer doesn't really know how to judge quality, so they use surrogates like appearance or freshness. And so you have a lot of advantages in what you do, in that you can certainly provide freshness in many cases if it's not a prepared product, and quality, etc. The second item is price, and that is often one of the most challenging to compete on. But it's really interesting when it comes to price, because while most of us are quite price conscious, even people who have enough money to pay a higher price usually appreciate a bargain. But sometimes people see price as a surrogate for quality, and if something is higher priced, they perceive it as higher quality. Uh, and then the third element is convenience. And I would say, in terms of providing local food, there are some ways that you can be more convenient than a local store. If, for example, you're right down the street, local to your customer, but it can often be a deterrent for folks who don't have a lot of flexibility in their schedules. So this is somewhat different from the top three that showed up in the poll. However, there's another three factors that I call emerging factors, because they're continuing to grow in importance for many consumers. And these are one of those trends is health and wellness. And that's something that I think every farm can capitalize on, because it's becoming of increasing importance. People are very conscious of it. And in some cases, for example, the grass-fed meat producers I work with will often get customers who are very concerned about having high quality meat, increasing protein in their diet, and so on. So I think that's a real opportunity for farmers. A second is social impact, and we saw that in the poll. And that could be anything from wanting to buy local and support the local economy, to animal welfare, fair trade. Lots of things might fall into that category. And I think that what we saw from the poll is that you folks are benefiting from it. And the third one is experiences. And I think what we saw certainly during COVID, that there are a lot of shoppers who care a lot about these three factors. And there are also areas that you really could think about: how can your offerings fit these trends? So they in terms of thinking about knowing your customers and understanding what they care about, it's a good idea to keep these six factors in mind, and think about how does what you offer uh, fit with any of these factors, and how can you emphasize that in what you're sharing with customers. So I'd like you to take a minute now to think for a minute about what three words you would use to describe your customers. Just whatever comes to mind. When you picture a customer, what do you think about? How would you describe them? And take a minute to think for yourself, and then after that, we'll have a minute for sharing. I feel like we should have the Jeopardy music or something going on while you write. Okay, well, you can keep thinking, but if anyone wants to share what they wrote into the chat box now, or to raise your virtual hand, Shannon will be happy to call on you to have you share what 3 words you wrote.
So we're seeing in the chat from Grisha, hi Grisha, that his customers value hunger relief. That's important to them. Anybody else want to share? Organic certification being important to Adrian's customers. Relationship. That's great.
Mhm.
Older customers, health conscious customers with financial means. And back up.
Mhm.
Product availability.
Mhm.
Local food system and valuing a localized economy. This is great. Thoughtful, engaging, and live nearby.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm going to go on. And what I want to talk about now are there 3 types of things that are really useful to know about your customers. And some of you just addressed that. Uh, One of them is demographics, and it's very easy to kind of look at your customers and observe them and think you know who they are and what they want. But I I when I think what I mean by demographics is basically things like age and where they live and factual information, statistical information. And in this case, you see there's a woman jogger. She's got a stroller, so probably she's health conscious, and you know that she's in the life stage of having a young family. So those are the kinds of things that you can easily observe and can be useful to kind of understand. Obviously, if someone has a young baby, then they're going to have some specific needs and be very time conscious. The second type of information that's really useful to know is what they care about. And that's what I heard a lot of when in the chat just now. And that can be anything from what their values are to their interests or their needs. And I chose this a photo of a woman gardening because one of the few things that almost everybody agrees on in research is that people who are gardeners are very likely to also shop at farmers markets. Or to value local farms. And it's actually, to me, I was sort of surprised when I first learned this, because I figured, well, if you grow your own food, why do you need to go to a farm? But actually most people can't grow all their own food, and they really value and appreciate your work. So the more that you know about what your customers care about, what they value about from you, the easier it is for you to emphasize that and to make them feel motivated to keep coming back. And then the third category is what they buy or do, and that's what I'd call behavior, which is stuff that is it's not internal. It's what you can tell from specifically purchases that they make or that they come for an agritourism event on your farm. And so all three of these types of information can be really helpful in terms of thinking about the best way that you can match your customers' interests and needs and to um, make them interested in coming back. And so it can be a little difficult to get some of this information, especially what they care about. And so I want to do is talk about a few fairly simple techniques that you could use to gather some more information. So one of them is just observation, which is, you can learn a lot about your customers from observing and noting down what they say or do. And if you have any employees, they're very valuable. They're going to see your customers and ask them what they've observed. So I would not discount the value of just paying attention to what's happening. The second technique is feedback, and we have a wonderful way of getting feedback now called social media and the internet. This is what one person posted in a customer review for Parley Farm, which I'm going to talk about Parley in a little bit. And, oh my God, any of us would be thrilled to have a review like this because they talked about what a great time they had, the activities, and, they said it was crowded, but the staff was amazing at guiding. This is something that is kind of feedback we all want. But there's also verbal feedback too that's important to pay attention to. And as I said, it's a good idea to write things down because you might forget them and it helps you keep in mind. Obviously, sometimes you get the other kind of feedback where someone complains about the long lines and isn't happy, and that's important to pay attention to that too. Existing data or behavior. If you have any kind of point of sale system, if you use Square, any kind of accounting software for inventory or anything, you're collecting data of various kinds. And so the best data is the data you already have, that you don't have to put a lot of time and effort into collecting anew. And it could be anything from your best-selling items, if you're tracking them by item, to in some cases, if you have point of sale, then and you have information by customer, you can actually learn quite a bit if you have permission to look at that customer data. So that's a really key way to learn about your customers. And then the last one would be learning from like surveys and polls. And, that may sound kind of intimidating, but there are actually a lot of apps that let you do free online surveys like Google Forms, SurveyMonkey, Typeform, a lot of people use, or if you use like email software like MailChimp or Constant Contact, those will let you do a simple survey. Or you can even do like in an Instagram, you can run a single question poll in a story and, just ask a single question. And it's a great way to, if you keep it short, you won't get everyone to respond, but you can also collect some good data that way. So those are all ways that you can try to learn a little bit more about your customer. And the more that you know about them, the easier it is to make all of the other pieces we're going to talk about work. So before we talk about customer service, is there anything coming up in the chat, Shannon, or
I don't see
any?
anything yet. Does anybody have any questions about that first strategy, knowing your customer? All right, we can move on, but don't forget to add them to the chat as you think of them, and we can address them as they come up.
Okay, so our next strategy is providing stellar customer service, and which I'm sure you all do. And we are going to start with another poll here. So you want to run the poll?
Yes, are you seeing it now?
Mhm.
Just another 30 seconds or so.
Well, this doesn't surprise me really either. Obviously, folks are very concerned about quality, and that's something you can definitely excel at. And I see communication is key, and that's our strategy number 5. So both of those are smart things to focus on. Product information, training staff are there. Less focus on customer loyalty program. We're going to talk about that in a bit. And the focus on convenience clearly is one of the things that is not a key focus for many of you. So I'm going to talk about some of the examples of some pretty outstanding customer service. And hopefully some of these things will seem accessible for you. Do you want to, oh, I can close the poll myself. Okay, all right. So, oops, sorry. Every so often it stops advancing for unknown reasons. There we go. Okay, so one of the first items is welcoming, and that is something that everyone can do. And you all said that you work on training your staff to be welcoming. So I mentioned Parley Farms earlier. They got that wonderful feedback. They're up in Tingsboro, Mass. And one of the things they really emphasize is training staff to smile and go the extra mile for their customers. And that can make a huge difference. And that's certainly something that doesn't cost us anything. I know it can be frustrating at times to keep the smile on your face at stressful moments, but that's certainly one aspect of welcoming. Free samples. It works great for Costco. Maybe it can work for you. I know there are challenges depending on your health department, what you can do in your particular community as far as samples, but you can either do passive sampling like Idlewild Farm here in Acton does, or you can have a staff person offering the samples, which certainly gives you more chance to interact with your customers. You can sometimes waste a lot of money where people love the samples but don't actually buy anything. So you have to do it very thoughtfully, but it is a proven way to help people feel excited about coming by your farm or stopping by your farm stand stall. Another aspect that I think is really important is signage. People hate being confused. They hate feeling stupid. They hate feeling like they don't know where to go. And especially if they're new to your farm, they're not going to know where to go necessarily. And so I give this example from Red Fire Farm in Montague because they have these, what I think is this really fun, cool signage that looks very welcoming and friendly. It's this bright yellow. And, a lot of times, to be honest, when I see some of the agritourism farms, there's a lot of nagging and a lot of don't do this, don't do that, and danger, danger. And I do understand you need to be careful. You don't want people stepping on your crops. But it's important to find that right balance where people still feel welcomed. So I think that this is a really nice example of doing it right. Convenience, that is just a challenge, it seems like, for a lot of you, and it can be challenging. But for example, another farm that I really admire is a Demerit Hill Farm in Lee, New Hampshire. They get a huge amount of business for pick your own. And what they do to avoid crowds is they set up an extra tent outside. So they have a second farm stand so that people can buy their pay quickly and get in and out quickly. And you might notice they have their logo over on the crate sitting in the back there. They have their own apple picking bags, so they do very well in terms of branding as well, which we're going to talk about also in a bit. So this is an interesting way of adding convenience, I would say. Um, then another basic golden hour tulips in Berkeley, Mass. They're still a pretty small scale operation, but I was pleased to see that they had porta-johns for visitors when they had their pick your own tulips and their sunflower. It's ideal if you can make a really clean, family-friendly indoor bathroom facility. But what's important is that you provide the service. It's another way to be convenient if you're doing any kind of agritourism. Um, Parking, I know this is a huge issue. Um, if you're doing agritourism at all, but even if you just have a popular farm stand on busy days, it's going to be crazy. You do need to think about providing an adequate number of spaces. And if you can possibly spare staff so that they can help customers find a space and direct traffic, that can make a huge difference. So whenever you can, think about that, because that can be be a strong deterrent to folks. Informative. This particular farm stand at Waverly Farmers Market in Baltimore really caught my eye because you cannot miss that $5 each. There is no question about how much that costs. And I think that people don't like to feel stupid. They prefer not to ask questions, so make things super obvious. Another way to be informative, this particular farm caught my eye in Burlington. They had you can really see that beautiful list of the different kinds of products they have on the right with all the different colors. And if you walk up closer, you can see the product list with the prices. It's all super clear. And that makes, again, it makes a huge difference. So thinking about how can you present the information in a very colorful way or friendly way, that's important. Product signage, a lot of you said that you focus on information. I particularly like how Sienna Farms, their product signage really tells you a lot about the product. It's very enthusiastic. As a consumer, I get really excited. I really want to try those shishito peppers. They do it in a nice way where they have the pre-printed uh, signs with the logo that they can update as needed. So I think they do a really nice job there. Another piece of information that's important, this is from Flat's Mentor Farm at Copley Market in Boston. That SNAP sign, you see it right there. And if you are a SNAP customer, you definitely feel welcomed. You don't have to ask. And if you offer SNAP benefits, that's really crucial. So those are all some great ways that you can be informative. The other piece that I think is important, which can be tricky, is memorable. Here's another slide from Demerit Hill Farm. They have this really fabulous antique pickup truck, and they use it for deliveries and promotion. You can see they have their farm logo on a decal on it. And, once you've seen it, I mean, you can't forget it. It's just so cute. You just want to check it out. And, it's definitely a way to be memorable. Another way to be memorable, this is in a farm. It's a tea company in Rhode Island, but I thought they did a nice job when I got the little thank you card with the order. They gave me information about how to contact them. And then they had this really nice QR code linking to a special custom playlist on Spotify. And so, it was very on brand for them, the kind of music. It's a Black-owned farm business. And it just made me feel a connection. I felt like, even though I haven't met the owner in person, I felt like that sense of connection. QR codes are really so versatile. They're a great way for you to include a custom message. You can create them for free. They're also something that you can look at the the analytics and get a sense of what's working for you. So I encourage you to think about what could you do. This is obviously great for e-commerce, but there are ways you could do it with a farm stand or with your stall at the market. Another great idea that's easy to execute. And then this one, I was at the Ward's Berry Farm a few years ago. It's the only place I've ever been able to do pick my own potatoes. And I just thought that was so cool. And I loved that I could pick my own potatoes. And so having a memorable product, I've told a gazillion people about it because it was different. You can go a lot of places to get apples, but there are a lot of places you can pick your own potatoes. So there are lots of ways that you could be memorable. So let's stop for a second and just pause to think about from any of these examples, is there anything you could feel like you could do that would make your customer service more welcoming, convenient, informative, and or memorable? Was there anything that you think, I might want to try that? So take a minute to think about it, and then as you do, please feel free to share it in the chat, or if you want to raise your virtual hand, we're happy to hear you talk about it.
I will share if that's okay, Myrna. I work at the
Hey.
Roslindale Farmers Market sometimes, and we with the neighborhood farm down in Westport, and we sell over a dozen varieties of garlic, and
Mhm.
people just have so many questions about that and which garlic they should use for this dish. And so we do the method that you shared that Sienna Farms also does of getting really descriptive about the flavor profile and what it can be used for. And it saves some of those questions, not all of them, but um, it saves you from answering 1,000 questions about what kind of garlic they should buy. Same thing with tomato varieties, with kohlrabi and some of those other less familiar products. Um, I
Yeah, that's a great
see,
example because not everybody sells those many kinds of garlic. And so
right,
if people get excited, if you're a garlic lover, that's a great way to be memorable.
right. Veronica, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks for calling on me. Thanks, Myrna and Shannon and James for putting this on. I wanted to share, we could do a lot more with signage, just kind of the basic farm signage. We don't even have one with our name on it by the side of the road, so that's something we really want to get on. But things that are like educational. So we do You Pick Strawberries, and it would be fun to have signs out in the field that are colorful and weather durable that families can look at while they're picking that explain, how strawberries come to be, what makes a strawberry ripe or not, how we control for fungal disease in our patch, which is unique. And so like things like that, I think would be sort of fun as a part of the experience.
Yeah, I think that's great, Veronica. And also it's something you can do with QR codes too. Like you can have the main fact on it and then a QR code people can scan to get more information. So it's one of those great tools that we have.
We have a couple of things in the chat as well. Um, People appreciating the colorful and obvious signage ideas, as well as as offering vegetable varietal write-ups with nutritional facts. Um,
Hmm.
and a request from someone at Brookfield Farm to put some benches in the pick your own field so that older folks can take a break, which they're planning to do.
Ooh, like that.
Recipe inspiration close to lesser known veggies. Yes.
Hmm. Definitely. Okay, so maybe, oops. why don't we move on to our next category, which is about loyalty programs or incentives. And, as I noted, seemed like there were fewer people who said they offered them, and we're actually going to do one more poll asking about loyalty programs. This will be a good way to see what you might not even think you have it, but it could be a form of a loyalty program.
Just a few more seconds here. I'm seeing a few people selected the option that says other. So if you want to share that in the chat, that would be great.
Yeah, great.
All right, I will share the results.
So the number one thing that came up for folks is invitation to events, which, as you'll see in a minute, is a great approach. And then we've just got a few people who do a digital loyalty program, a couple of punch cards, a number you offer some type of discount or reward for email or text subscribers, a couple of coupon folks. So we're going to talk about some of the options you have here. So I'm going to turn this one off. Oops, somehow I went back. Oh, okay. All right. So I divide loyalty programs into three groups. And this is not some official thing, it's just the way I like to think about it. So the first one is what the printed punch card approach, which several of you said you use. It's basically it can be anything, but with the idea that it's something that you create, you print out copies of it, and usually it's something like every time you buy a coffee, you get a card punched, and then the 10th cup is free, something like that. So that type of loyalty program, the advantage to that is you don't have to pay anyone to have it. You just have to offer the free item. And so you want to just figure out what the optimum match is, where that motivates people to keep the card and use it, while still not giving away too much profit. The second type is a digital loyalty program, and I'm giving this example. My local food store in Boston, which City Feed and Supply, which has a lot of products from local farmers, they have a digital loyalty program, and essentially all they do is it's programmed into their point of sale system. So when you sign up, all you have to do is give them your name, and then when you're buying food there, at the cash register, they say, "Are you in our loyalty program?" And I say yes, and they look me up. And then I automatically get that added. I don't have to carry anything. I don't have to have something on my key card to scan. They know who it is. And, for me, as someone who's local, it really makes it much more affordable to me to get 10% off on everything there. And it certainly helps me feel loyal and appreciated. So the challenge with digital loyalty programs is that they can be, there's an extra cost for that, that in most cases you're paying some kind of software company. And, if you're already using Square for point of sale, it's an additional fee. and not necessarily that expensive. And what it means is a lot less work for you. So you just have to, again, evaluate, is this working? Is this something people like? Is it affordable? Doing your own traditional punch card program, which not everybody's going to bother carrying a card around with them, versus a slightly more expensive digital program. And then the third one, which a lot of you are using, is what I just call informal loyalty perks or incentives. Like a lot of CSAs will have an end of season party for their members. And everyone loves a party. It's a great way for people to meet each other and feel appreciated. Sometimes it'll be a potluck or something like that. But there are a ton of different things you can do. If you can either have something that is public that you announce, like the CSA party, or it could be something that you actually do as a you do it kind of for a special customer. Like you could say, I'm inviting you to come an hour early for pick your own before everyone else comes. Say you have an older customer who is super loyal and wants to be able to avoid the crowds and so on. So there are a lot of different ways that you can reward people, because either as a group or as individuals. And so I think there are anybody can do a loyalty incentive. And so I hope that those of you who aren't doing one think about some of the opportunities. I want to emphasize that if you do have a loyalty program, you want to base it on a goal. Because if you're not clear why you're offering it, it will be very hard for you to measure if it's working. So say, for example, you have a goal that you want your customers at the farmer's market to buy from your stall every week. You could have a punch card or a digital card, or it could be something that you get them to sign up for your email list, and they get a special discount on something if they're a member of your email list. It could be something you do to get CSA members to renew. A lot of people will offer an incentive that if you renew and recruit somebody else, both of you will get a discount. There are other kinds of perks you can offer. You could do something special for people who follow you on social media, or just do something like I was just talking about to make regular customers feel appreciated. But basically what you want to do is you want to write down what your goal is, and then think about the best way to match whatever your offering is to that goal. I want to give a really fun example. Bemis Bucks is Bemis Farms is a nursery in Spencer, Massachusetts, and they have a really unique loyalty program. As you can see, they create their own Bemis Buck, which I'm not sure it's legal. You're not supposed to copy cash, but what they do is that everybody gets one printed Bemis Buck for every $10 they spend during the spring, and that's redeemable for up to 50% off any purchase during a specific 5-day window in July. So they've had many years to perfect this and to maximize the profit for it and make it workable. And so they get a lot of foot traffic during the middle of July, which is a slow time. Even for a lot of farmers markets tend to slow down in July because people are on vacation. And so thinking about what could you do that hits people at a particular time, because they've been running this a long time, they've really figured out how to make it work. For example, they grow some specific items to be at their peak during this 5-day window in July, so that they'll know they'll have plenty of good-looking product, and they can also think about which products are profitable. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it. So they don't recommend it for everybody, but you can do anything you want to do with a little bit of creativity to make it work for your particular farm. And I think this is a great example. There's a little bit more detail. I have a newsletter and a blog, and I spotlight different farms on it. And so they were I spotlighted their farm, and she went into some more detail on that. So if you go to marketingyourfarm.com, you can see, to farm marketing stories, you can see a little more detail on it. But I think it shows that you don't necessarily have to do something that someone else makes up. You can create your own program. So let's just stop and give you a minute to think about what you just saw in terms of these loyalty programs. Think about, is there a specific goal that you might want to achieve that might be helped by a loyalty program? So let's give you a minute to reflect, and then as soon as you're ready, or if you already have a loyalty program that you think is working well, feel free to type that into the chat. I'd love to hear some other examples of what you're doing as far as loyalty and how it's working for you.
Myrna, we have a question in the chat that relates to this question of what a farm's goal is and how a loyalty program can maybe help them achieve that. Adrian asks, their farm has a goal of being a more inclusive space, and so they're wondering if loyalty programs are counterintuitive to that goal, or if you see there being ways that loyalty programs can be contributing to a goal of inclusivity.
I think that's a great question, and I don't think it has to be exclusive. A lot of loyalty programs can focus on if you have someone coming for the first time, how do you make them welcome and encourage them to come back? And so, for example, if you have a strategy where everybody who comes gets something with their produce that says, here's a 10% off coupon on rutabagas on your next visit, or whatever it is, it can be a way to encourage people to come back. But you could also, as I said, you don't have to have the same incentive for everybody. If you see someone that you haven't seen before and you really want to encourage them to come back, you can offer them some kind of perk that you don't offer everybody, but just people who you feel like you want to give that extra little bit of encouragement for. So that's why it's such a versatile tool that you can use, and it's great that you have a defined goal like that. I'm sure we could do a lot more brainstorming to come up with other ways to make that work. But it's important to start with that goal. And I think you're very smart to make sure that you're not discouraging people from coming back by being too insiderish.
There's another question, not so related to that question, but Veronica asks about any automated systems that you might know of for digital loyalty programs. Just thinking something like the Bemis Bucks, which takes a lot of planning, or are there other options? Are there automated options to cut down on all that extra tracking that would maybe go into a digital loyalty program, such as spend $100, get 10% off, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the one that I'm familiar with is Square. Since so many farms use it, and they have a number of different things that you can do. It's not an unlimited one, like it doesn't necessarily offer all of the programs that you might want, but it enables you to essentially what you have to do is they don't let you contact the customers directly unless they're on your list, but basically they will send a message to people that says, thank you so much for visiting, here's a coupon for your next visit, and so on. So it makes it easy to do, and it's also super measurable because you can track from that how many people came, and and especially if they're in your database, you can see, oh, they actually did start shopping here more because they got that perk. But if you Google, there are a lot of different options out there. You really have to weigh them carefully, and I think that's why a lot of people do the cards, the printed cards, because it's so low cost. But in this day and age, I I suspect you could do your own program with the QR codes or something, so that it's still something you print, but it has a QR code on it, so you're still able to give send somebody, they can collect the reward simply by scanning the QR code. So, but there are so many options out there, and I can't really recommend one over the other.
There's one more quick question on loyalty programs, if that's okay.
Sure.
There are actually a couple now that I'm saying that, but this one is a good one. Are there tips for preventing loyalty programs from slowing down transaction speed at farmers markets? Thank you, Daniel, for that question.
That is a great question. As we know from HIP and farmers markets, the more kinds of transactions that you're doing at a farmer's market, the more challenges there will be in terms of lines. And so it's very smart to think about it. Ideally, you're able to provide a second line, or, depending on the popularity of it and what the volume of you, even having one part of your stand where people go to redeem whatever that loyalty perk is. But one way to handle it would be, especially if you've got something digital, is that it just gets delivered to them. If it's so, a lot of people have CSAs with digital cards where they're essentially paying with it's one of those market style CSAs, not the traditional CSAs. So they're basically getting a discount by prepaying a certain amount. And so if you had that type of card, you could program your loyalty right into the card, so it gets subtracted. I mean, essentially that's sort of what it is. If somebody is prepaying, and they get a card that they can swipe to pay when they come in to buy stuff. So that I would say would be the easiest way to do something like that, because it's not an additional transaction, it's part of the transaction. But it's a good question, and absolutely you want to think about it. Like, maybe the easiest way to do it is that people get a little freebie tossed in. Like if they've paid for their rutabagas, that they get a free I don't know, have to make it affordable. You wouldn't, maybe one free heirloom tomato or something. You want to make it something that people really like, that's appealing to them. But the advantage to that idea would be that it's right there. It just gets added to their bag when they're getting the other stuff. So there are lots of ways to think about making it go super smoothly, so it's a minimum of extra fuss.
And we do have a couple ideas for loyalty programs that folks have shared. Susan shares at her farm, if you sign up and pay for your CSA early by January 31st, you get a free week of veggies.
That's great.
Yeah, we have loyalty prepay cards. And Veronica suggests, she says, we want to convert our strawberry customers to buying other products, especially pork. We could provide a coupon to strawberry customers that offers a discount on our pork. I think also providing a one-time discount for referrals would be helpful for us for certain products.
If there were any way to do a tasting of the pork too, that would probably be a super powerful, may not be practical, but there's nothing like people sampling how wonderful your pork is to get them to want to buy it.
And it sure is wonderful at Old Earth Orchards. It sure is.
Or you could even do, I've never seen a farm do this. It could be risky, but things like the love this pork, or you get your money back or something, or I don't know what it would be. You'd have to be cautious because it's such an expensive high-end item, but a lot of people use guarantees of various kinds, love it or your money back, to motivate people to try things. So it's not exactly loyalty, but it does sort of lower the barrier to getting people to try something new. And that could be, a goal of your loyalty program is getting more people, strawberry customers, to try our pork. And then you could just sort of brainstorm about all the different ways that you could do that. And then you could ask a few customers, would that motivate you? The great thing about it is if you create your own program is you can keep trying it, and you could try 2 different alternatives and see which one works. And it's all about which one motivates people and is affordable and doesn't slow down the line too much. Okay, I think we should probably go on. So the next item is of talking about branding, and there is no poll for this one. So you may be saying to yourself, well, what does branding have to do with people coming back? And so I want to talk about a little bit. I do a whole separate workshop on branding, and I'm sort of doing a very abbreviated bit here, just to make sure. Some of you, I'm sure, are very, very good at branding, and some of you probably still feel like, what exactly is it? So I'm going to try to give everybody a sense of that. So just for a moment, just take a look at the 2 cups on the screen. And for most people, and I always find when I do this with farmers, they always have a lot of strong opinions about Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. The thing is that when you look at the cup, you're not just thinking, you may be thinking about, oh, that's a delicious cup of coffee, but you may also be thinking about what type of people get coffee from Starbucks versus Dunkin' Donuts, or what's the experience like when you wait in line there? Is there a long line? Does the barista know you? Do you feel annoyed by having your name written on the cup? There are all kinds of things, but essentially, there are some people who are indifferent, but there are a lot of people who think of themselves as, I'm a Starbucks person or I'm a Dunkin' person. And that's really what branding is all about, is that people have such a strong connection with you that they will go cross the street, ignore the Dunkin' and go to Starbucks, or vice versa, because they connect with it. And so that's really what you want to be thinking about with brand. And there are 2 different aspects of branding that we're going to talk about now. So the thing that keep in mind is that you can't control your brand. Like Starbucks spends so much money on marketing, but they don't control everything that people think about them. There are going to be people that think things about you no matter what you say, but there are things you can do. So one part of your brand is your identity, which is the factual stuff, who you really are, what type of coffee you have, what kind of roast is it? Is it dark roast or whatever? What does it cost? These are the things that are pretty much factual, that most people would kind of understand. And so that's the part you control. The other part is your image, and that's basically how you're perceived. The things that, people are going to think what they think. You can try to shape those perceptions, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but you can't ever totally control it. So when you're trying to clarify your identity, you want to look at the things that you can control. So I love this example from this farm, Owl's Nest Farm, and they're in Maryland, from the homepage of their website, because it's just very super clear what they care about, what kind of people they're trying to attract. And then not only do you see this language, but you also see this tablecloth, which isn't like perfectly smooth, it's wrinkled, and nothing about it is like super fancy, but for people who want the authentic, real deal, this is going to be super appealing to them. So things that you can control that will potentially draw people to your brand are your farm name, your mission, your values. If you use a descriptor or a tagline, if you have like an about page on your website or some kind of bio about you, a short description or brand statement, those are all tools that you can use. And most of you probably already do use these, but I do see an awful lot of farms that do not. So those are things that I think of as that's the factual stuff that you can control, that can work pretty well. So what about shaping your brand image? So that's a whole other thing. So that if you have a logo for your farm, a lot of things in the logo can kind of already suggest how you want people to think about you. Something I call brand personality, which is the same thing as anybody's personality. Like what would you say to describe that person? Um, are they friendly, or are they aloof? Are they snobby? Um, are they, you know, anything that you would say about a person, you would also say about a farm or a brand. Tone of voice, and obviously that comes from spoken, but when you do social media or your website, the choice of words you use, whether you use contractions or say things more formally, all of that affects how people see you. And if you're trying to come across as super high end and classy, that would affect how you want to convey things versus if you want to come across as family friendly. And then color palette and fonts. And, if you use certain colors consistently or certain typefaces, that also people react to those. For example, if you saw this combination of colors, they're so bright, they're so cheerful, they're primary colors, you'd probably look at that and say, oh, that's very family friendly. Whereas if you saw this palette of colors, it's very earthy and some people would say dull, other people would say sophisticated. So you can shape how people feel about your farm just by the choice of colors that you use. Like remember the bright yellow signs that I showed you from Red Fire Farm. That created a tone that was very friendly and warm in my opinion. So you have a lot of tools at your disposal, that cost you nothing to develop as long as you're thoughtful about it. So what I want to do is a little exercise. This is one of my clients that I think has done a really wonderful job building their brand image. And I'm going to show you a few images. These are from Fat Moon Farm. They're an organic gourmet mushroom farm in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. And so here's their logo. So take a look at their logo and think about what typefaces they've used, the images they've used, the colors and so on. And just kind of look at it for a second and think about it, what type of farm, what words you might use to describe them. Then here's another picture. This is from they just did a successful crowdfunding campaign. They had to, they got a matching grant and they had to raise money from people to contribute to the campaign to buy the van that you see in this picture. So clearly a phrase like, let's get the shiitake rolling, it conveys a certain element to it. And then the third thing is, this is one of how they're showing off some of their product, some of the types of mushrooms that they grow. So think about how they're presenting it, what the people are wearing and they present it. So when you look at these all together, what kind of words would come to mind to describe this farm? Type it into the chat.
We see approachable, fun, homegrown, community oriented, clean, approachable again, trending, earthy, friendly, humorous, giving. That's a good one. Coordinated.
So those are really
Clear.
positive things you'd want people to say about your farm, aren't they? And you're getting all that from 3 images. One of the things that strikes me is so much consistency with the color palette. Like that just, I just love that. you know, I'm not sure if it was an accident to be wearing the orange in the photo, but I just look at that and I think, oh, wow. Okay, so so I'm going to go on. So just take a minute to think about, well, what 3 words would you want your customers to use if you asked them to describe your farm? You know, just off the top of your head, you know, are you family friendly? Are you fun? Are you um, uh, are you sustainable? Are you helping the planet? Are you welcoming? Are you inclusive? You know, what 3 words? Type them into the chat after you've had a chance to think a minute.
I see organic, sustainable, community, holistic, accessible, welcoming, authentic, sincere, educational, sustainable, again, inclusive.
So when you think about this, like if later on, you want to use some things that are factual about you, but also think about what feelings you want people to have, because people don't buy products, they buy feelings. And so that's really what branding is about. People are going to Starbucks because it makes them feel like they're treating themselves to something special. And the more that you can associate feelings um, with your farm, the more that you'll be able to use branding as to keep loyal customers. If they won't even be thinking about it, but it's going to make them want to connect with you. They're going to want that to get that feeling they get when they're coming to your farm, or even if they just see your social media post and it makes them think about, oh my God, those animals are so cute. You know, it just makes them feel like it's a break from their other routine. So um, any last comments there, Shannon? We should move on soon.
Yeah, there's a few more in the chat, but I think that's great advice to think about this going forward. And one thing I want to mention before we move on from branding, like Myrna mentioned, she does whole webinars on branding. And this is probably even a conversation you want to have with more members of your team than we're able to attend tonight. So if you want to do a deeper dive into branding and you need a little guidance from a consultant like Myrna, reach out to me and we can get you connected. And like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about our one-on-one options at the end, but just in light of kind of a big branding conversation, right? Don't be intimidated. There are options to work with other experts on this.
Great. Yeah, that I would be excited about working with you folks on branding. So, okay, so the last section is about creating communications that also help to build that customer loyalty. So it's, oh, I skipped past the poll, but I think I'm going to skip it because I want to use the time to cover these concepts. So obviously this is not how we communicate these days, but there are some common communication elements that you can keep in mind, and I'm going to go through in more detail. But the 4 ones we're going to talk about now are what your messages are, who the messenger is, the degree of connection you have with your customers, and channels or touch points. So the first one, messages. Here's a text message, sale, that kind of will work with some people, but may not be consistent with the brand that you want to present. But each message should reinforce your identity and the image you want to convey. So you don't want to go against your brand. Not that I'm opposed to sales. I love sales, but you have to be very careful that however you present it fits with who you are, how you want people to feel about you. In general, what the advice on things like social media, but pretty much anything I would say is that you should strive that every message should either be informative, entertaining, or inspiring, because those are things that really are most likely to get people to feel a connection and to pay attention and to really want to see your next message. And then just again, think about your brand values and your brand personality to match it. So, you know, what is it that you really want to convey? So I think that part is probably pretty easy to get. The second area is a messenger, and I think this is something that most of us don't think about that much. But basically, who's the person who's speaking for your farm? Is it you? Is it your whole family? You know, that there are times when you are the ideal person to speak for your farm, but do you ever use any other people to speak for your farm? You should think about it, because sometimes you might want to choose a different messenger that conveys your message in the right tone of voice for your target audience. So I'd like to introduce a spokescow. You know, there could be a time when you could say, you want people not to step on the grass. If your spokescow says, please don't step on the grass, they're going to have a whole different reaction than if you have an ugly printed sign that says, keep off the grass. So, think about it in a creative way. Is there a way that your message is going to get heard differently by the messenger who is conveying it? Then the degree of connection with your customers. You're going to have different types of relationships with people depending on what they buy from you. And so it's a good idea to think about it when you're thinking about how you're communicating with them, because the people who are the regulars you have a strong relationship with, you're going to take a different tone and different kinds of messages with them. So these are just like all kinds of different ways that you might have a relationship with customers, from farm store regulars to the people who just come for ice cream or, a workshop, versus your CSA members. So that's always a key part of the communication. And chances are you already do adjust your messages to a certain amount there. But it leads me to another point, and this is what I'd say a little bit more of an advanced approach, which is about customer segmentation, either by what the customer does, what they buy from you, or their value to your farm. And so as you can see from this image, because you're pinpointing a particular part of the pie, you're able to reach them more accurately. So for example, these are just, it could be about what they buy from you, where they buy from you, are they first time or long time customer? How much do they spend? How often do they visit? Are they local versus tourist, direct or indirect? Any of these things can really affect how you might want to approach them, because essentially the more that someone feels connected to you, the more friendly the tone you want to use, and the more you want to make them understand how much you value them. Excuse me. And, there's nothing worse than getting a message that says, dear valued customer. Do you feel like a valued customer if someone says, dear valued customer? Of course you don't. Whereas if they say, dear Myrna, at least you feel a little bit like they take the time to send it to you. So segmentation, it's a probably one of the more advanced topics in customer loyalty, but it's also a really powerful tool. So just one example here, going back to Parley Farms, they have this a newsletter for their email subscribers. Generally, those are the repeat customers, and they have a few perks for them. They send their newsletter out a couple times a week in the season. They get an advance notice if there's some new crop available for picking, because they have a really strong pick your own program. If they're doing a special, they announce it through the e-newsletter first, or if somebody wants to do a pickup, curbside pickup, you can only get that if you're an email subscriber. So it's a very simple type of segmentation, but it's also builds in that customer loyalty element. And, people generally respond well to that. It really, when people are trying to decide whether or not to subscribe, they can say, well, you're going to get first notice about the new crops, and that's going to make people want to sign up. And then the last thing about this is if you do have different segments of customers, you may want to communicate with them differently. Like if you have people who only come to your farm once a year for pick your own, it might be worth mailing those people a postcard to remind them, which you might not, it can be expensive to do a mailing. You might not have everybody's mailing address, but if you do a raffle, you can get people's mailing address. And that can be something that's super effective, whereas you wouldn't do that with people who are coming to your farm stand every week. So it's about how do you want to reach them? How do they like to be reached? And then what can you do that it makes sense given that particular mode of communication? You're going to communicate with people differently on Facebook than you would if you were into TikTok, and texting has its own kind of set of ways to communicate. So it's basically, if you do some segmentation, it really gives you a lot of opportunities to make people feel that deeper connection with you, the personalized content that really motivates them to keep coming back. So that's sort of like a way to use that fit communication in a really powerful way to build that customer relationship and build that motivation to be a loyal customer. So does anyone want to share some way that they do any kind of segmentation?
I'll just share that we do this at CMAP. We have our broad newsletter that goes to all types of audiences. We have a newsletter that's specifically for farmers and needs that would be relevant to them. And we have a separate email list for CMAP members so that if they want to share anything with us to make its way into those broader newsletters, that we can reach them that way. So email lists are probably a feature that's available if any of you use an e-newsletter platform like Constant Contact or MailChimp or any of the other ones. That is almost definitely a feature. Veronica shares, we have a special list called the Awesome Asparagus Alert that lets people know, that lets people who love our asparagus know when it's coming.
I love that. I want to be on your list.
Kelly shares, wholesale customers get a list of exactly what plants we have available. Regular customers just get a newsletter that the sale is live on the website. Erin shares that she uses Constant Contact and has options for folks to join specific newsletters for programs, CSAs, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And Hannah, I see your question in there, and we'll just save that for the Q&A portion, but we'll get to it.
Those are all really good examples of easy ways to do segmentation. And I just encourage you to think a little bit more about, are there other ways that you might want to, the thing about segments is they have to be a group that you can identify and reach the same way, because you might say, well, we want to reach the people who really care about buying local, but how would you know which people care about buying local? Whereas you can always reach the people who buy asparagus. If you, well, you can't always reach them, but there are certain ways you could potentially reach people who care about asparagus by having a special asparagus segment. So Okay, well, there's what I wanted to do was whoops, just take a minute before we wrap up this section about the go into the Q&A and discussion portion, which is, was there anything that you found particularly helpful about the presentation, something that you are curious about that you might want to try? Um, let's share some thoughts to see what you are at least going to think about.
As we start to think about that too, I'm going to use the opportunity to put our survey link in the chat. It shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes, but it's really helpful in determining what kinds of workshops we offer going forward and what ideas need more expansion, that kind of thing. So open that tab and save it for after the webinar. But Erin shares, I love the idea of an end of season CSA party of some kind, something that helps us build community among our customers. We love when they make friends with each other. That's great.
Nice, and it's a great time to get them to sign up for next year too.
Hmm.
Or like you could even have a raffle there where somebody wins a free CSA share if they come to the party, or that might be too expensive to offer, but there might be something like that you could do that really adds to the fun.
Hannah shares, I'm excited about doing a printed punch card. We have lots of old cardstock that could be reused as a punch card for our open farm days.
All right.
Veronica says, I just want to sit by the fire and use this PowerPoint to brainstorm fun ideas this winter with my partner. Strawberry to pork customer conversion coupon, special listserv for longtime pork customers. Thinking of tying in the repeat customer segment with requesting polling responses. I think those people will be more likely to engage. Good point.
Mm-hmm. Well, to close off my part, this is my contact info, which again, you'll see this in the slideshow, but if anybody, you can scan the QR code if you're interested in getting a copy of the book. Please feel free to contact me. As I said, I'm happy to feature people, different marketing tactics in my newsletter and blog, or check out some of the stories that are there already on Marketing Your Farm. So I get so happy when I see farms succeeding. So if any of these tips are helpful for you, I'm happy about that. So I know Shen's got a few things to say, and then we can just kind of do some more general discussion and brainstorming.
Thank you, Myrna. I learned so much, and I'm excited for the Q&A portion too, because I know there's some other questions out there. I did just want to mention, I've alluded to it, but we do have the capability to fund some one-on-one work with Myrna. So CMAP has a business assistance program, particularly for assisting beginning farmers, meaning 10 years or less in farm management, but really truly for anyone. We focus on Southeastern Mass, Norfolk, Bristol, and Plymouth counties, but our borders are fuzzy, and we often help people from outside of that area. We also have great partners in other parts of the state who can do really similar things. So the way this program works is either you come to me with a problem and we find somebody that can help you fix it, or you come to me with a consultant that you want to work with, that you need a little financial assistance to make it happen, and we can also do it that way. So just something to think about. We have these workshop spaces, of course, but some of this might feel like, whoa, I need to actually do this a lot more in depth and maybe with some more members of my farm team. And just so you all know, that's totally something that we can help out with the funding for. So it will be in the follow-up email as well. but I'll also just put my email in the chat in case people want to email me before they forget with any ideas that they might need some help with. One other thing I wanted to mention is just a quick save the date for our conference. So CMAP traditionally has an agriculture and food conference every February. This year we're collaborating with 9 other regional organizations to put together something that's a lot more comprehensive and also in person for the first time in a long time. So please save the date, Sunday, February 4th, in person in Dighton. And a link to that information will be in the follow-up email as well. Yes, last thing is just a reminder that we've been recording this whole thing. I think, yes, we'll record the Q&A portion as well. And I will distribute the recording tomorrow via email to everybody who registered. Please feel free to share it far and wide. It will also live on our website, but definitely share it with farming friends who it would be helpful for. And then other than that, I think we can open up the question and answer period. So definitely feel free to, turn your cameras on and raise your hand and ask some questions, or continue to put some questions in the chat. I did see one question a little bit earlier from Hannah, I believe. If we're ready to just dive in. Are we ready, Myrna? Okay, cool.
Yep.
So Hannah asks, how much should you be posting to Facebook and Instagram as a farm and or as a nonprofit farm?
It depends a little bit on I actually try to suggest different strategies for different farms. It's not a one size fits all. Like if you're a super small farm with very limited resources, you post on Facebook and you get no traction on it, then maybe Facebook isn't the place you should be posting. What I recommend for that is to just have essentially a static presence on Facebook, where you have a page, because people are going to be looking for you on Facebook, and you can pin a post to the top and you can say, just, we don't really look at comments here, but if you want to reach us, go here, here, or here, either in person or online. If Facebook is working for you, and I do know a lot of farms that works great for, or Instagram, or whatever channels they're using, for Facebook, I would say what's most important is that you post on a somewhat regular basis. So, you're not some like giant brand that's got a huge staff to be posting. I would say, in general, if you want traction and you are getting engagement, you will want to post at least 2 or 3 times a week. I don't really feel like you have to post daily. If you're a small farm. Instagram, I think it's better to post more frequently if you can, because you don't have to do a long post. And so if that's working for you, if you're visual, I think it helps to pop up in people's feed pretty often. There's different recommendations if you've gotten into TikTok or whether you're doing other things, but that's my general advice, if that's specific enough.
Yeah, and I would say, and James, feel free to chime in, but one thing we've noticed is that we have very different audiences on Facebook versus Instagram. And those 2 platforms are integrated really well. So it is, very easy to post the exact same thing on Facebook as you post on Instagram at the very same time. And maybe that works for you. Maybe the simplicity of it works for you. But we've noticed just a different type of audience with, maybe needing different content, different tone, and different frequency as well. So that's something that, yeah, go ahead, Nana.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's kind of the thing that I have strived to not do, is post the same thing on Instagram and Facebook. So I try to make them, very different because I feel like they're very different platforms. So like Instagram is very photo heavy, and so I try to make it, beautiful pictures and just short little quips about what the picture is, whereas Facebook is more, I feel like, our educational tool where I get to like really dive into what this, thing is that I'm posting about and yada yada yada. And people read it because our Facebook followers are much older demographic than our Instagram followers. And so I try to not post the same, but so that was my question, is like, how much should you be posting if you are in fact posting different things, like, do you feel like it's like a 3 times a week or like every day or, like once in a while? Like that was my, because I'm trying to post differently.
Do you want to jump in here, James, since you're working on the social media for CMAP?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Myrna. I just wanted to, and I want to make sure there's time to move into other questions, but two other things I wanted to add on this conversation. One other thing to think about with social media is the basic interaction people have with your content on each of these two platforms. We're talking about Facebook and Instagram. They're inherently different in a few different ways. Hannah, you hit the nail on the head that Instagram is very primarily picture oriented, like we all understand, but there's also things like how you send, like sharing links and things like that function very differently. You can put a link in a Facebook post and give someone the chance to follow up on your website or on a resource you have. You can't as effectively share a link in an Instagram caption because they can't click through. You have to redirect them. So even that basic interaction and integration of those sorts of things changes, which sort of helps with having to make things different because you have to think about that functionality, but also is a step to think about when someone sees this post, what can they do with it and what do I want them to do with it? The other thing I would say, Hannah, I mean, on the social media side at CMAP, we always talk similarly about how am I posting too much or am I posting too much? What is too much? I like the way, Myrna, you laid it out earlier, talking about making sure things are either informative or entertaining or something. If you're hitting those things, I think the fear we have of overposting is greatly heightened. You can overpost, but if you're posting content or things that people can engage with that are insightful, informative, or some way stimulating for them, I don't think people will feel as overburdened as we worry they feel sometimes.
Okay, yeah, I hear that. I hear that.
Yeah, I
James,
think that's great advice.
would you say, James, that we post more frequently on Instagram than Facebook? I think that's what Myrna suggested as well, but
Yep.
that's what it looks like in practice for us too, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's things that don't translate as well over to Facebook for sharing, things that translate better to Instagram and vice versa. So Instagram works better for more frequent posting because it's more dynamic. Posts will feel more different generally because they're picture oriented, so it won't feel as repetitive versus where Facebook posts can largely look the same just based on Facebook's aesthetic and can start to feel a little more redundant, I would say.
We have a couple other questions in the chat from Kelly. For a new farm business in the first 3 years of business, or one expanding into a new enterprise, how much time do you think is typical or fruitful to spend on marketing?
Well, in general, when people ask me about it from the standpoint of how much should I spend on marketing, I would say if you're really in a startup or growth phase, you really need to budget 10% of your money on marketing. And so I would say if you can't put 10% of your money in, I would certainly encourage you to think about as much as 10% of your time, because you really, that's how you're going to increase sales and build a strong base. You know, but it's so much more important to be intentional about what you do than purely about how much time or money you're spending. And the thing that really pains me to see is that an awful lot of people, they're on social media because they think they need to be, and everybody else is, but they're actually wasting their time on it. And if it's not working for you, minimize your time on it and think about other ways that you can build these strong relationships with people. I mean, there's a whole other workshop I do about the 3 strategies that every farm needs. Is one is, what are you doing to keep loyal customers, which we just talked about. The second is, what are you doing to increase sales? And the third is, what are you doing to attract new customers? And so ideally, every existing farm should have a strategy for each of those. And it's better to do one strategy for each of those well than to try to do everything, because you probably don't have the resources to do everything.
Yeah, and there are some, there's some tools that can help schedule out, schedule out social media posts so you can, set some time at the beginning of the week and just get it all done and not think about it for the rest of the week. If you're just doing Facebook and Instagram, you can do that pretty easily through their internal platform, but also I've heard of farmers using something called later.com, which just helps to kind of schedule things out and focus your energies into one, rainy morning or something. And then we have a cool question from Jennifer. I've been thinking about the presentation of our vegetables at our farm stand and for our CSA pickup, which happens in our root cellar, and how that presentation can impact our sales and customer loyalty. Any advice?
Well, maybe you need a spokes vegetable. It sort of depends on what are your goals. Like, you want people to feel a certain way about coming to buy from you or to do the pickup. And so if, the 3 things you want them to feel are included and like it's meaningful because they're making a contribution by being part of it. And the third is excited because they're getting all this delicious food. Just for example, those might be 3 things. Then you would want to think about, what can we do and how we present this that reinforces those things. Some of it could be signage. How do you create an inclusive atmosphere? There's lots of things you can do in that sense. So it's really about thinking about what's important, what do you want people to connect with you about, and then how can the mere presentation, like I was saying, that most people, the surrogate for quality in people's mind is visual. And so creating that sense of abundance where you have, I'm a big, I don't think they're doing farmers markets anymore, but Sienna Farms used to just do these gorgeous sort of European style produce displays at farmers markets that just looked so lush. And there was something about it that just made me want to buy everything. And so, it's how do you create that sensual element that makes people feel like they're celebrating you and they are together celebrating food. So there are so many different ways. First, think about what feelings or thoughts you can express, and then, what tools can you use, from signage to information to surprises, delighting people with something that they didn't expect, that extra little free rutabaga or whatever it is. I just like saying the word rutabaga.
One more question in the chat, and then maybe we'll see if folks have questions they want to pose aloud. What's a good resource for analyzing the success of a customer loyalty tactic? For example, figuring out what data you need, how to gather it, how to understand it efficiently.
That's actually a super big topic. I do have I'm not trying to hawk the book. Well, I am, but I do have a whole section in the book about measuring results because it's so key. And I'm thrilled that you asked that question because I think it's another thing that breaks my heart that more farms don't do. Try to start from the most simple way you could possibly measure the results that requires the least amount of work and it's not necessarily the scientific method, but it helps. So like for customer loyalty, if you knew everybody by sight and you could just visually identify that they're coming more often, well, that's great. But most of us, the bigger your farm is and the more people that work there, you can't necessarily do that visually. But like the people who have point of sale systems, there's unbelievable tools you can use in that if people agree. And if you provide them incentives, most people will agree that allows you to essentially track what they buy from you. At the very least, you could possibly track frequency, how often they're buying from you. There could be tools where a lot of people will have like a promo code that people use, and so you'll know whether or not that particular tactic worked because they use that promo code. So there are so many different tactics you can use and go with the simplest possible so that you're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can, as someone who asks for surveys from very busy people a lot in my job, I can tell you that incentives to get that data can be really helpful, and they can also be really simple. So a lot of times we can offer, we have CMAP branded grocery bags, and then that's, they're getting something tangible and helpful out of it. And we're getting not only the survey data, but we're also getting our logo out there. And there are a ton of little things that you could get kind of along those lines. I see a lot of farm stickers everywhere. And I think that could be, something that would incentivize somebody to do a little extra work for you. Any other questions that people haven't posed in the chat that maybe they want to unmute and share aloud? All right. Seeing none, we can end a few minutes early. Myrna, do you have anything you'd like to end on, or?
No, just, I think this was a lot of fun and hopefully people got some good ideas from it. And, I always love the suggestions that farmers make to other farmers. So, I hope that when you're hanging out with other farmers that you think about asking them, well, what do you do about customer loyalty? And maybe you can get some more ideas from each other. But as long as you think about what the goal is before you do it, I think that's the key.
Yeah, I think that reduces a lot of frustration around marketing, right? Most people don't get into farming because they love marketing. But it is a
Sadly,
necessary,
that's true.
it's a necessary part of a farm business. So
Right.
yeah, that goal setting can be really important. That's something, like I said, that Myrna can help you out with one-on-one, or that myself or James or Susan on the CMAP team can help you out with as well. So we'll close it here, but I will send that follow-up email, including the recording link tomorrow. I'm going to put the survey link just in the chat one more time, but really thank you all so much for coming. I know it's a really busy time of year. I hope you're all having a lovely holiday season, and I hope that you'll come to some more CMAP programming in the new year. All right, thank you, everyone.